And straight on the back of that story, let's get some insights on the conference and the state of democracy in East Africa, Uganda and Kenya with my guest, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, also known as Bobi Wine, who's here with us in studio. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for making time for us. And I immediately want to talk about the reason that you're here, the Uganda Human Rights Accountability Conference. Help us understand this. How difficult would it have been to host this conference in Uganda? Why Nairobi?
Well, it's not just difficult, it's impossible because, you know, human rights is something that is unheard of. As a matter of fact, there's a joke that the torture masters make when they abduct our people. The soldiers in those torture chambers, they say, we don't know human rights here, we know human left. That's the joke they have. So there's no human rights in Uganda. And never mind that I'm an opposition leader, or that's where I'm relegated to, or Dr. Kizza Besigye. We can't be allowed to have a gathering, especially a gathering talking about human rights.
Did you try to apply? Was there an attempt? Was there a discussion around trying to have it in Uganda first before choosing Nairobi?
Well, we are largely seen as illegal citizens. You know, you don't have to ask because they will not allow you. Many times they've tear-gassed, disrupted our gatherings. So we thought for us to be able to communicate to Ugandans and the people of the world, we decided to come to Kenya, where we knew that there's at least a little bit of rule of law.
But then if it can't take place in its jurisdiction in Uganda, how effective do you think the conference is in a completely different country?
Uganda is under capture. Uganda is under gun rule. It's a military dictatorship. But we know that dictators don't only fall because of internal forces. You will remember that in 1979, Ugandans had to converge in Moshi, in what is known as the Moshi Conference, to base there to go back home and remove the dictatorship of Idi Amin. And the same thing happens in the 80s. General Museveni and all those that he was working with were worked through Kenya. So we look at Kenya as a safe haven for Democrats, especially we that are non-violent.
What are you hoping to achieve? What are you hoping will be the outcome of this conference, which I believe concludes tomorrow?
We hope to achieve a lot of things, but most importantly, to create awareness, not only in Uganda, but in East Africa, in Africa, and the world. We know that Uganda is not living in isolation. We are in what is purported to be the East African community. And we want the members of the East African community to know that the people of Uganda, and I believe the people of East Africa, don't want this East African community to be a club of presidents. We want these leaders to be accountable to that. The atrocities that are ongoing in Uganda, superintended over by General Museveni, have to be brought to the table. And we want to call upon other leaders that are passively supporting General Museveni and aiding him to do that.
Help me understand this, and as I listen to you tonight, and I'm sure our viewers are watching us across the country and virtually online as well. Some ask, what keeps you going? We've followed your story, Bobi Wine, from when you were a musician to this path that you have taken, and very passionately at that. What keeps you going?
Hope. Hope and history. Looking where we're coming from and looking in the future, that keeps me going. How? Looking back, I know that no dictator has ever lived forever. No oppressed people have ever been oppressed forever. I know at the end of it all, always the people win. So that keeps us going, knowing that history shows us, and the further back we look, is the further in front we manage to see. We know that no dictator has ever won. And we have hope because so many people, especially young people, are awakened now. Back in the days when we were looking at our elders like Dr. Kizza Besigye, not so many of us were politically conscious. I'm 40 today. But until I was 35, I was dancing the night. We are not looking beyond Friday night. But today, young people as early as 16, 17 are standing up to demand for their dignity, to demand for accountability, to demand for their rightful position, and to demand for their right to determine their own future. So the future is encouraging. Many young people are awakened now. If there's any time to be hopeful, it is now.
Does that future include another presidential run for you?
I, and together with my team, we're not looking at just me running for president or me being president. I came into the politics of my country not only to become president, but to awaken as many people as possible. We have so many Ugandans, many of them even more talented and more knowledgeable than myself. So what we want now is to push away a dictatorship so that at the end of the day, we have the right, we have our vote counts. Today, the vote doesn't count. What would be the purpose of running again for president when this time around I ran and beat General Museveni hands down, to the extent that this time they did not rig. They just disregarded the results.
You're saying you beat...
Oh yeah, I beat General Museveni everywhere in the country.
Your electoral commission issued a completely different...
Forget that fraudulent electoral commission.
And because I know you're a believer in rule of law, surely, you know, they are the body mandated to announce who won the election.
Oh yeah, but there was no legality in this case whatsoever. Every legal tool was disregarded. Every law was disregarded. I'm sure you Kenyans watched the presidential campaign that we went through. I went into a campaign wearing a bulletproof vest and a ballistic helmet. This is an election campaign, a presidential election campaign, where I was abducted on the day of my nomination. On the 30th of December 2020, my entire team was arrested. Many of them are still in prison today. On the 18th and 19th of November 2020, there was a massacre because I was illegally arrested and Ugandans protested peacefully. The military went on rampage and killed hundreds of people, although General Museveni acknowledges only 54. And I want to clear, you mentioned 24. 54. And the regime acknowledges 54. But our human rights desk, you know, counts over 100 people, 100 cases of people killed, you know. We went to that election with the internet completely switched off, you know, with the military everywhere. All our election observers, all our election managers and observers were rounded up and arrested. US and European Union election observers did not show up. You cannot call that an election. But even with that, we managed to beat General Museveni because according to the declaration of result forms that we got, we still beat him. Never mind that they doctored them, we still beat him.
It's your word against the Electoral Commission. And of course, we live in a world where people are allowed to express themselves, but rule of law is something I know you're very keen on. I have many more questions for you. Allow us to take a short break, and when we come back, we get deeper into this. Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu, Bobi Wine, the leader of the National Unity Platform, live here in studio. We've got a lot to get through: the state of democracy, the state of Uganda's opposition, and so much more. We'll be coming back with that. 2242 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is